So a lot of our listeners today are expats, and very often they're struggling with how to adapt to very fast-changing international life. And as such, you really need to listen to our next guest, because it's Sundae Schneider-Bean, who comes from North Dakota, calls Switzerland her second home, but today lives in South Africa. And Sundae is an intercultural strategist and host of the Expat Happy Hour, which is a very successful podcast, been rated #1 on the iTunes places and travel section. And that's what Sundae does. She works with individuals and organizations in countries all over the world, helping them to adapt to their international life. And she's been through this herself. She's had to face up to a coup d'etat, terrorist attacks, and navigating very dodgy internet connections when she was based in West Africa. All of this whilst keeping her family safe and growing her global coaching business. Anyway, let's have a listen.
This is the Expat Business Hero podcast, and I'm your host, Alex Congdon.
So welcome to the show, Sundae. Great to have you on.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Alex.
So you've got this very interesting and unique name, Sundae, which I'm sure you've had your share of, as you grew up, of misspellings and mispronunciations. Can you just tell me about it? How's it been for you with that name?
Okay. So normally I tell people I will give them 100 euros, Swiss francs, or West African franc if they can tell me a joke about my name I haven't heard, but I won't do that on the podcast. It's too hard to control globally. Sundae is spelled Sundae, and I really try hard to avoid any association to a product you can buy at McDonald's. That's ice cream. My father thought his sister was graduating from kindergarten. He's 18 years older than his youngest sister. And my sister and brother are named Carrie and Mike, which are pretty much the most average American names you can think of. So I don't know why they say that they aren't hippies, but they chose a pretty hippie name for me by the time they had me, because I'm one of 3 kids.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, good. We got the spelling sorted. That's a good start. So listen, I'm really excited to have you on, because not only are you an expat entrepreneur, like everyone listening to the show, but you're specifically in the business of helping expats, how to adapt, succeed in their new setting. So can you just tell me a little bit about your business and also your podcast? Because you've got this amazing podcast, the Expat Happy Hour. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about those.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm a solution-oriented coach and an intercultural strategist, and I help people who are living international lives adapt as quickly as possible, find their way to collaborate across cultures, because cultural differences really do matter. Help them maintain their relationships abroad and at home, their new home, because that's really important. And finally, to have fun, to cherish their experience. So that's really what I'm about. I work with people who have an assignment abroad and are there for 2 to 4 years or longer, who are navigating in a new culture. And I work with a partner who comes with them. And that's where the business side comes in, because oftentimes the accompanying partner is very well educated, talented, has a great career, but gave up what they were doing to support their partner and their career abroad. So that's where reinventing yourself is really important. And so Expat Happy Hour is a podcast that really tries to shed light on the reality of expat life. Not just, I don't do like the easy tips, pack this and do that. I deal with this tough stuff, like the identity and the relationship stuff. And when you're kind of having a midlife crisis when you're abroad, or the challenges of raising kids, I really try to talk head on about the things that some people shy away from.
So, why did you actually start the business in the first place? What was the driver for you?
Well, I was basically an intercultural strategist and coach for a large company in Switzerland. And I was serving, top clients, CEOs, really great top talent programs. And to be honest, I'd worked hard to do that. I'm from the US, I moved to Switzerland, my partner's Swiss, and I had to recreate myself professionally and learn how to do all of this and do it in German. And one day my husband comes into the house and he said, "Hey, Sundae, I should tell you, I applied for a job." And I look at the job and it was with the Foreign Affairs for Development. And I thought, "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yeah, I'd like to, live abroad." And I looked back at him and I said, "Oh, I am living abroad." So it was one of those things where we had, small kids, and I really was living my dream. And I thought, well, I do want to support my partner in doing this. And I'm an intercultural strategist. I've lived in a developed context. I have, created a great profession there, but there's so much else out there. So I said, if I really am good at what I can do, I should probably walk the talk and go to a new place. So we went to a Francophone country. We went to the third poorest country on the planet. And I took what I was doing already internally, because we were, what is it called? Not a nonprofit, a not-for-profit, meaning everything I sold, I had to, or any costs I had to recuperate through my own sales. So I had, even if I made profit at the end of the year, I had to give it back to HR and start with zero. So I was already operating kind of my own business within a corporate structure. And I thought, well, now it's time to do it on own. Honestly, it was about walking the talk and proving it to myself and adding more value for my clients.
So you mentioned me beforehand, there's no secret recipe or formula, but I mean, some of the key insights then for an expat, having to adapt or succeed. I mean, can you share at least what you're hearing today and some of the approaches that that might help them?
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I think what they're adapting to and what they're trying to succeed at. But I always start with my clients with themselves. So a lot of people who are working interculturally might want to start looking at the other, like culture like there. What are the people like there? And I always start with yourself, especially if you're an entrepreneur, because your success and the way in which you can grow is directly related to what you believe about yourself, what you think you're capable of. So I always start with the self, and we look at what are the things that are blocking you, what are the things that you're struggling with, and we try to get those things done first. I think expats could really benefit from is giving themselves some grace on the ups and downs. Like if you're having a hard time, it does something wrong. It means that this is challenging, right? So what kind of strategies can you use to go through it with little higher highs, a little lower lows? And that has a lot to do with resilience. Taking also your mental hygiene, like, are you telling yourself, oh, I can't do this is too hard, I made a mistake. Those are some of the things that I think are really important. And once you're really about taking care of yourself and how you're seeing your situation, how your strategies are working, then you can start looking at outward. Like, okay, what cultural context am I in? What are their values? How can I adapt my strategies so I can still be effective and culturally appropriate? But I would definitely start with yourself.
So I love that you call yourself a solution-oriented coach, which I guess that means you help get your clients from A to B, as fast as you can. I mean, why is that important? Well,
it's also a methodology that I'm trained in. So solution-oriented coaching has the basic principle of, it's different from therapy. We're looking at where you're at now, where do you want to go, and what resource do you have that will get you there? And it's also looking at when I say resources, it means what strengths, what assets do you have? And we look at the past, like when have you been through a challenge like this before? What did you do that worked? Because I really believe that the answer is not actually in me, it's in my clients. And my role is to harvest what they're best at and to find strategies that feel authentic to them and have worked for them in the past, but apply for a new situation. So as a coach, I call myself a coach and not a consultant in that sense, because I really believe that my clients have the answer, and that's my job to pull it out. And that's where the solution-oriented coaching comes from. Intercultural strategist is the consultant side. Like, hey, we know a lot about, working across cultures. We know about transition. You should probably know that this is normal, or these are the strategies that work and don't work. So that's kind of how I combine the two of them.
I mean, you're doing all of this from South Africa, but you work with clients all around the world. But just on a practical level, how do you do that?
Okay, so I have no clients in South Africa. All my clients are in the United States, Europe, Asia, Africa. They're in other places. How do I do that? I mean, I work with, what I do is I share my podcast every week, Expat Happy Hour, and I stay in contact with people who are interested in learning more, and they find me, or I get referrals, and then we work over FaceTime and Skype, and I do one-to-one coaching for the individuals, or I'll work with organizations. So one thing, I've done for years is I work with top talent programs. So people who have been tapped on the shoulder organization and have been seen as leaders. So I help them with their intercultural competence development or their leadership development. And that's really interesting. Some companies will fly you to India or to Germany or to France, and everybody meets together training, which is fantastic, but that's a high budget thing. Other companies want to do it more virtually. So I'll record, tailored videos for whatever we're learning, and then I'll do coaching in smaller groups or one-to-one with them, and when it matters. So it's actually quite easy to work location independent when it comes around learning and development, because it's a very personalized experience, and it's a very intimate experience, and you can have that if you're meeting with someone, face to face. I say that in quotes, like expat face to face over FaceTime or Skype. You can do that without having to get into an airplane.
So you've lived this life then, that of the expats that you're supporting. I mean, so you say that you're American by birth, Swiss by marriage, and an expat in South Africa by choice. Can you just it gives a little bit more about that journey? I know you touched on it before, but how did you get how did you arrive there?
Well, what might be interesting for some people to know is that I'm not like a kid of a diplomat. My mother was a farmer, my mom a housewife. I was born and raised in rural North Dakota in the border of Canada, and grew up in a very homogenous community. At the same time, I always was hungry to see more of the world. I knew there was more there besides the homogeneous, group that I grew up with. And so I studied abroad in Spain, and I was working at a consulting company. It was then consulting, now it's Accenture. And in between assignments, after I graduated, I went to Southeast Asia, and I was backpacking through Thailand, Vietnam, and Laos, and I met my Swiss husband, this guy, at the last 2 weeks of my trip. And long story short, I moved to Switzerland almost 18 years ago, and I had to recreate my life in Switzerland. I had to give up, I had a really great job for my peers coming out of college. I had this wonderful social network, and I had to give up everything. In fact, I studied Spanish. I had to give that up and learn Bandutsch, the Bernese dialect, and German at the same time, And that was a really raw experience for me. I really had to literally take my ego and stomp it on the ground, jump up and down, because everything I built up was gone, and I had to recreate that. And it was tough, and I had to do things work-wise that I never would do, and wasn't getting paid a lot, and I wasn't using my skills, and had to do that journey myself. And this was also before Facebook and before expat groups and internet. I'm a triangle, all those things, none of that existed. So I was left to my own. And that's what inspired me to get my master's degree in intercultural communication. I was also in a binationalship. My husband is Bernese, he speaks German, and wait a minute, our family culture is different. And it was a raw experience. So I decided to professionalize it, to learn about it, and also to support people going through that. It was just something I got really passionate about. And to be honest, in hindsight, it was kind of crazy, because when I got my master's degree, it didn't even exist as one in Switzerland. I was looking for master's programs, and there were very, very few that even addressed it. But I just said, what the heck? I believe it's something important. I want to do it. And I found out a way to make it happen.
So you leave Switzerland, and you end up first stop in Africa.
Yes.
Just tell us a little bit about that, and tell us about also some of the challenges that you had arriving in Africa as you were setting up your business.
Right. So that was, again, there's some things that's good you don't know before you go. I had an idea when we were going to West Africa that it was literally the worst internet on the planet, and having an online business, it's not a great combination. No. But I think the first challenge for moving to Burkina Faso was I was a mother of 2 young boys, and we had this secure nest in Switzerland. And then we were moving to a place with a really high rate of malaria, and the healthcare system was quite poor compared to what we were used to. So I had my own emotional journey of saying, is this a smart idea? Am I being a good parent? Can we do this? To think about my business, I was like, I can do this. I'll figure that out. It was more the first phase. Once that happened, the pragmatic challenges as a business was, I realized I was like a 5 or 6 hour flight away from Belgium or Paris. But psychologically, people thought I was so far away. And so people that I had worked with and we had worked virtually suddenly felt like I was really far away. And I realized I had to do a lot more to capture people's attention and let them realize I am not like in a mud hut with nothing. Like I am in where I can communicate and have phones. And so I suddenly, in Switzerland, if I did an event, there were 300 people there. And one person in the audience would call another person and say, oh, you're looking for an intercultural strategist, call her. It just happened word of mouth. And so it's because I be in front of the public and it's a small community, people network, and I got jobs very quickly. All of a sudden, being in this remote, according to some people, location, I had to find a way to reach them. And if anybody is brand new to entrepreneurship, I just have empathy for you if you have this idea. If you put up a website, people will find you. I mean, it's the most ridiculous idea now in hindsight. But I thought getting my website out there would be good and people would find me and contact me. And it's not that way. Realize that you have to go to people. You have to constantly be creating content, articles and reaching out. And I had no idea that was ahead of me. So that was challenging from a business perspective. The other things that were challenging were just pragmatic. We power outages, political turmoil. We had an uprising. We had an attempted coup d'etat. There was a terrorist attack, which led to me, relocating temporarily to Switzerland. And the unexpected, like our copper was stolen from our telephone wires 1 week and I had no phone lines or no internet. So you have to be really flexible, be ready to find alternative solutions in places like that.
So no one here in Switzerland should ever complain again about internet speeds after what you've been through.
No. And I love it when I'm doing a call with someone and they're in Germany or they're in Switzerland and their internet's bad. I'm like, yes. It sounds really bad. It makes me happy because it's not me now. Now I have fiber optics in South Africa and it feels great.
Now you mentioned something which I listened to actually on one of your recent episodes, and that's about the health challenges that you get when you bring yourself and your family to a new country, and you experience this to a certain extent yourself as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and why it was important for you and your family, but also for other expats?
So I think in general, especially as a parent, like what's the most important thing to you? Your health is all that you've got in the end. And if you're living in a place where you have cultural uncertainty, or you have language problems or cultural differences, your health things could go wrong fast. I've even had situations in Switzerland where I went into a doctor's office. Due to misunderstandings, we had to backtrack because at that point, my German wasn't as good as it is now. So I think it's important for expats and also for entrepreneurs to realize that little things in your home country can be really a big deal when you're doing it in another cultural context. So I always recommend people to take a little bit extra care for planning, as well as maybe understanding what's going on in the local culture so you can ask better questions, or maybe not ask as many questions if that's not culturally appropriate. Then you ask those of your community if it is safe to ask around. And then, it's just pragmatic. If you're living in a place that has healthcare that's really much lower than what you're used to, you have to think about what your plan B is. Right? Like, do you want to go skydiving in that country? Do you want to do, the kind of sports that might put you at risk? Or are you okay with your kids being medevaced because they broke their arm falling off a horse? You just have to make those decisions, have your plan B firmly aligned.
Yeah. So moving on now to about the subject of, getting support during this journey. So what's your take on using mentors specifically in your business, and how have they helped you in your journey?
Well, I mean, this is probably not a surprise as a coach. I've worked with a mentor since 2008. I mean, I've been a coach for 10 years, and I had a coach from the very beginning. So a shout out to Janet Wilson, who was my very first mentor. I believe in fast tracking people's success. So to fast track success, I really believe that's where a mentor can come in handy, because they've walked the road and they know where the mistakes are and can help you avoid some of them. Of course, you can't avoid all of them. Some we have to learn on our own. It's like being a teenager. You make your own mistakes sometimes. But I really believe that in mentorship, and I mean it so much. I put my money where my mouth is, that I've invested as much, tens, of thousands of dollars in a year in a mentor, because it's what I knew I needed to get more professionally. And so I've worked with a mentor since the beginning. And my mentors change. Like, who you need as a mentor adapts based on where you are in your business. Sometimes it might be more personal. Sometimes it might be more business and strategic. Maybe it's more sales. Maybe it's cultural. But absolutely. Even I would go as far as saying, if you are focused on your entrepreneurial path, but you have problems, let's say in your marriage or with your health, I would get a mentor in that area, because that will have a direct impact and a direct positive impact on your business.
I mean, have you got any learnings on how to actually get the best out of your mentor?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question.
One thing to say, just get a mentor, but how do you actually use them to and work with them? Get what's your experience there?
Great. So this goes for my mentorship and the people who work with me as a client. Here's the thing, and I know how tempting this is. It's like you want to throw money at a mentor and then they fix it for you. But what would really help someone be successful is you get clear, what do you want? You communicate that clearly to your mentor, and you show up to your mentor sessions, your coaching sessions, whatever, prepared. You drive the agenda. You say, by the end of our session today, I'd like to get clarity on B or C, whatever it is. And your mentor can say, whoa, that's way too big for today. Let's take this chunk. Or they can, attack the whole thing depending on the subject. So get prepared. And the best thing is you do the work in between sessions. That actually the impact of the mentorship relationship happens between sessions, where if your mentor, your consultant says afterwards, okay, try these 3 things, then do those 3 things. Yeah. Because that's where the real learning happens. So the next time you meet the person you're partnering with, you're that much further. I don't know. You must work with mentors or mentor. What do you think is?
I've worked with many mentors. I've worked with many mentors over the years. Some have been successful relationships, some have been less so, and I definitely agree with the bit about doing the work, because I think a lot of people feel that somehow it's something that gets done to you. The mentorship is not. It's about you showing up and actually applying yourself, and you do have to make that decision that you can do it. That's the thing.
Yeah. And I always tell my clients, I want you to bring your worst self to coaching. You have nothing to prove to me. You don't have to impress me, right? If you bring your insecurities, your frustrations, the honesty about what wasn't working, then we can do something with that, right? That when you work with a mentor, it's not to impress them or have them think you're doing a good job. It's about them where you're really at.
And I think that's a tough challenge actually for a lot of people who particularly, very experienced career professionals who may struggle with being a little bit vulnerable and showing, that they may not have all the answers themselves. So you mentioned in one of your podcast episodes that running a business is like the best way to build up your self-worth and your self-confidence. So how has this been true for you?
Mm-hmm. It seems so counterintuitive, doesn't it? Because anybody who's tried to run a business it can make you feel like crap if things don't work out. Yeah. So how it's worked for me, I think, is when things come easily, I don't learn or grow much. Yeah. But when I've had to work hard on something, I've had to dig deep down and say, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? What's going on? And of course, the first thing that's going to happen is, oh, you're crap. You didn't do a good job. It's not going to work. There's all these negative things that come up. And then you say, wait a minute, how can this work? And what do I have that is an asset to make this work? So it makes you dig deep to find a solution and to find the answer in yourself, whether it's your resourcefulness, whether it's reaching out with more vulnerability to your clients, whatever it is. And that process is what, when you come out on the other side, you're able to say, wow, I did that. Because when you do something and it comes, you don't get that moment. But when you work for it, then you can celebrate, like, wow, I can't believe I did that. And that's where your self-worth and self-confidence builds, because you dig for it and you make it come out and demonstrate it over and over. And then you start to believe in your abilities. So honestly, and anybody who's really serious about making their business work, I don't believe your business can work if you don't do that. I just had a random idea that went viral. I don't know. I don't think that's reality. I think most people invest a lot emotionally, energetically to make a business work.
Are you seeing quite a few of your clients actually going down this route of setting up a business versus being the...
Yeah.
You're saying this more and more.
It's fantastic. I love it. So, not all of my clients come to me to find their business. Some clients come to me because they already have a job and they're trying to up their performance or create more balance in their life. There is a handful of clients that come to me. They're looking for more meaning and purpose. And we focus for a year on find what is meaningful and purposeful for them. And along the way, about 40-50% nail an idea that happens to be a business. And that is such a wonderful experience. And what I've noticed there is it's all about the self-confidence. I'm not good enough. I can't do it. I don't have the right resources. And when we look at it in black and white, actually discover they are ready and then figure it out. And then I put them onto that journey to get their business idea and get started. What is their client, etc. And just recently, I'm working with marketing and sales where we help people go from no idea to the right business idea that is portable. Portable is passionate and it is profitable. And I'm working with Amel Deregi from Tandem Nomads to do that, because I think there's a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs. They want the portable business, but they just don't know what idea.
Yeah, and they get blocked from the start, which is not great.
Yep. Right. And they might be blocked because they have a lot of ideas. They don't know which one, but they might be blocked because they don't believe that they can actually do it.
Sure. So for yourself then, looking ahead 5 years from now, where will you be?
Oh, man. Well, I know I dream big and I've got big plans. Okay. So in 5 years, I would like to really work on my impact. There's a lot of people that I reach through, my blogs and podcasts, but I would like to reach more beyond the one-on-one coaching. So I've created some products that are more scalable that you can, consume at your own time. So I'd really like that to be happening. There's books, works that I have preparation for that I would like to see launched within the next 5 years. There's actually 2 that I would like to see. More work with corporate, because I do believe that there are organizations that really care about their people's success and expect a lot for them to hit the ground running when they get there, but don't really have the resources to support them in a way that's actually really going to make a difference. And I'd like to be the one who creates that for them, because I think a lot of people, especially when you're sent by another organization, how are you doing? Do you need support? No one's going to say they need support because they don't want to be the one who's red flagged, right? So I would like to be able to be the one could offer that support with no shame, with no red flags, with actually to become an even better performer. So I'd like to see that, and I'd like to change a few lives along the way.
Okay, sounds pretty ambitious to me. So that's great. So listen, I ask this question to everyone that comes on the show. So it's your time to give back. Let's imagine if you could choose someone or a group of people to mentor, who would that be?
I honestly, I would choose a group of women, probably in the age between 35 and 45, who are feeling stuck, because the women that I meet that are actually have so much talent and ability and a heart of gold and global experience that if you really tap into that potential, they could make a bigger impact in their community. So I'm a catalyst to inspire those women to tap into their own strength and abilities and create the businesses or nonprofits or community events or whatever it is to make an impact to people, and hopefully to communities that are less privileged who need more support, but really kind of a place of empowerment, so that, because impact is something that's really important to me. And unfortunately, what I've seen in my work is that the women that I work with are the ones that have more work to do around their worth and self-confidence up.
Okay, well, that's great. I mean, so if any of those people or any others want to reach out and find you, get in contact with you, perhaps you could just tell us a little about how they could do that. And I will put all the details in the show notes afterwards, but could you perhaps...
Sure. They can reach me anytime. I'm at sundaebean.com, SUNDAEBEAN. They can email me directly at sunday@sundaebean.com. Send me a message through my website, or subscribe to Happy Hour and check out what is the latest that I have going on.
Brilliant. Okay, well, listen, I just want to say thank you. I really want to recognize everything that you're doing, acknowledge all the great work that you do, and because I think you're making an amazing impact. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on the show. And let's perhaps do this again in a while and see where you are on your journey. But it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Alex, and thank you everyone who's been listening today.